special gentleman and very, very topical is what we're going to discuss and talk about today because I think a few days ago the President of the Republic of Ghana went to New York, the UN General Assembly, and promoted an idea that has come into fruition because a resolution that he pushed was passed by a large margin unanimously. And that was on the slave trade and slavery, and we talked about the slave trade being a crime and all that. But that's not what we're here really to talk about. But he is very well positioned to talk about it because he is Professor Samuel Ntewusu, and he is the director of the School of African Studies at the University of Ghana. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, so here we are on ZFM 101.9. The program is I Have a Story to Tell, so we're here to listen to your story. Prof, you tell us a little bit about your background, where you were born, and if you can, tell us about your childhood and your early school days.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Samuel Ntewusu. But where I come from is a community called Balai in the Pandai district of the northern region of Ghana. My father is Ntewusu and my mother Kwebunka, all of blessed memory. At home, actually, I'm called Grundo.
Grundo?
Yes, and it's out of the unique circumstances under which I was born. Usually, if someone should be born and the person should pass on between a 0 and 1 year, and then the same person or gender is born, it is assumed that the person has come back. And therefore they have to more or less take your identity from your community spiritually. So in spite of the fact that physically you'll be located in that community, spiritually you should be taken out because it is assumed that some of the spirits around might have caused that. So you get to know that I got actually typically integrated into two communities. In spite of the fact that I'm Nauri, the integration was actually within the Grushi and the Dagomba community.
I see.
So I think that even in the south, especially among the Ga, we do have that. Usually such a person will be given a mark on the face or given a very different name. So that is where I hail from. I had my elementary school there, then went to Salaga Secondary School. But when in SAS, I developed some eye problems, and so I had to be transferred to Yendi, where we had an eye specialist at the Roman Catholic Church then. So I schooled in Yendi, completed secondary school there, went to Tamasco, the Great Tamasco, completed Tamasco and came to Legon. But my Legon days were quite fascinating.
Good. Tell us about it.
Yes. So actually, let me talk about, I think the sixth form days too were quite interesting. Because sixth form, somehow we had a debate with Ganasco. And
that's Ghana Secondary.
Ghana Secondary School. And anytime we had any kind of competition between Tamasco and Ganasco, is really a very big thing. So it was debate, and we won. Apparently, it was from there that they gave me the name Professor Edubwany.
Oh, I see.
So at in sixth form, I was already being called Prof. Now coming to the university, and that will let you be so happy. So when I gained admission to Legon, actually, I didn't want to come to school because I was training to be a business student or an economics student, but I was offered history. More or less trying to say, look, you took on the name Edubwany, so certainly you better become a historian. But the funny aspect was, because in sixth form I was being called Prof, actually I should have found out what that meant. I didn't find out, but I had this nice briefcase, so I wrote on it Prof. So at that time we went for lectures. Most lecturers were looking at this kind of young man or small boy with a bag with the writing prof. I think Professor Finn had the courage to ask me to come.
J.K. Finn.
Yes, he said, a young man after lectures kindly come to my office. So I went there and he said, who is a prof? And I said, I don't know. He said, but then you have it on your bag. And I said, well, I got it from sixth form. And he said, what is the meaning of that? I'm just asking you a very simple question. I said, well, in school they were calling me Professor Dubois. Then he said, look, you better take it out. You are not a prof yet. So I decided to find out and go to know who really a prof was. And I think I studied towards it. So that was one of the very motivating factors for me to actually become a scholar.
All right. Yes, remember we've gathered you're a historian, but I'm sure the spirits also wanted you to be a historian. So, so you went to Legon and you did history.
Yes.
And then from Legon, you went on somewhere else, didn't you?
Yes. So Legon first degree history. And I think Professor Kwesi Pebi then saw the potential in me, and then she started mentoring me, made sure I became her teaching and research assistant. After my national service, she handed me over to Professor Arino Dute, who also continued with the mentorship as a director. And then when she left, Professor Techua Menu became the director. So I was so lucky to be mentored at that very age by a very powerful woman.
Three very formidable women.
Yeah, women. Yeah. And I am very grateful to them for that.
Kwesi Pebi,
Prof.
Her father was my father's very good friend, and I was on the board of the National Theatre with him. I've known him, I knew him from childhood. A very fascinating man. But Kwesi herself.
Yes.
I'm very glad that we can jump the gun, because Kwesi herself's book, Indigenous Slavery in Ghana, is a superb book.
Yes.
It's a seminal book, and we'll talk about it later. Techua Menu and I were in Tech Primary together, so I'm doing it very, very well.
Yeah.
Very formidable.
Yeah.
And all the three women you've mentioned, Auntie Irene, fantastic woman. In my chasing the history of Ghana and everything, they've been very, very helpful in giving and sending me in the right direction.
Yes.
So good.
Yes.
So continue. Sorry.
Yeah. So from there, I think I did my master's at the Institute of African Studies.
Yeah.
Then got scholarship to the Netherlands, to University of Leiden, to do history. The kind of history that I did at that time was transport history. So I remember coming back and interviewing one or two people, and they asked, "Are you an engineer?" I said, "Oh, I'm just a historian." So did my PhD under Professor Ian Bart and Professor Miriam DeBrine, another powerful lady.
Yeah.
Graduated in 2011 and then came back to Ghana.
So you've been teaching on the, ever since?
Yes, teaching at Legon ever since, teaching historical methodology, the slave trade in Africa, the history of colonialism.
Very fascinating, because right now the big topic is the slave trade. And I wrote a piece on social media telling people that I can see that from the tone and tenor of the argument and the narrative. Most people talking about the slave trade don't know anything about the slave trade, and you can't do politics with the slave trade.
No.
And it's not about literary expertise. It's about deep research and reading a lot. And so we'll be talking about that. But one of the things that we do on this program is that you have to select 5 songs that we intersperse in the narrative.
Yeah.
And so what is your first song? But before that, I want to remind people that this is, I have a story to tell on 101.9 ZFM, and my guest on the program is Professor Aniegye Ntewusu, who is the director of the School of African Studies in the university, the formidable and great University of Ghana, Legon. So what is the first song that you chose?
Yeah, I think I chose One Love from Bob Marley.
Ah, all right. You are really an African.
101.
Melodic music of one of the greatest musicians of our time, Bob Marley, and his great song, One Love. Thank you very much for that, Prof. Yes, we were talking about your early years. You grew up in somewhere near the Pandai area in the northern region of Ghana, and you're called Grundo, am I?
Yeah.
Grundo. It's a lovely name.
Yeah.
I wish I would call myself Grundo Baffour. Anyway, I'm fascinated about something that you said, that you ended up in Yendi.
Yeah.
And Yendi is the capital of Dagbon. I happen to have antecedents from Yendi. What was Yendi like for you, if I may go back?
Okay. So, for me, Yendi, at the time I was schooling, I saw Yendi to be a place to learn history already, in spite of the fact that I was pursuing business studies.
Yeah.
So I realized that, so for example, in the evenings, we always have traditional drumming and dancing in town, mostly around the palaces of the chiefs.
The Gwewa Palace.
Yes, yes. You know, so whilst you are in school, you are almost always imbibing this issue of tradition and culture. That was what Yendi meant for me. But more importantly, it was actually in Yendi that I realized that you can actually begin to know and appreciate different cultures. So in secondary school, I came across different students from different parts of the country. And you will not believe the number of Ga, the number of Akan speaking students and ever that we had in Yendi Secondary. So my being multilingual was as a result of that, because Ga students will be speaking Ga after school among themselves, especially in the dormitory. And Akan speaking groups will also be speaking ever. So Yendi Secondary for me reminds me of almost Ghana within a school.
Yes.
You know, so that is what I think.
But wasn't the idea when we started our secondary school system? Kwame Nkrumah very much so was so keen on not actually detribalizing Ghana, but making it not a factor in the development of the country, but he wanted all of us to appreciate each other.
Yes.
So unity in diversity, if I may use that hackneyed phrase.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I remember when the school recently celebrated its 50th. If you see the contribution from the old students from different backgrounds, I mean ethnic backgrounds, it was just fascinating. I think one thing that I also need to add is that when we were there, because of the nature of the North, you know, sometimes people refuse posting there. And I just realized that workers who were actually not teachers were so concerned that those who were working at the district assembly, for example, or at the hospital with particular expertise after school will come to teach us. And for me, I found that to be very interesting because they saw in us something that they needed to develop. They were not being paid anything. I remember when Mr. Zach was teaching us mathematics, for example. He was at the revenue office, but he wasn't being paid anything. So that kind of sacrifice at that time for me was also something that I found very interesting in school.
I'm very fascinated about that because, as you know, I'm a history buff. It's my love.
Okay.
And I have a whole batch of papers, African Morning Post, from 1935. And I found out that there were a lot of people from the South who went to the North and never came back.
Yeah.
And I found out because people tell, I'm part Ghana. Ghans don't like to travel and all that. But it's not true.
Yeah.
Ghans, when they travel, they don't come back. Because, I went to visit my family in Tamale and I met somebody who had a Ghana name.
Yeah.
A very strong Ghana name. So I said, "Oh, Tete." And he said, "Oh, I don't speak." I said, "Why?" He said, "Oh, it was my grandfather." And I said, "Oh, you've got the name."
Yeah.
So it's fascinating, yes. So Yendi, it's supposed to be as I said, it's the capital of Dagbong, so it's a repository of history. The Dagumas are very fascinating people, and so I'm sure you must have imbibed their history and their folklore and everything. How do you find it?
Yeah, so quite interesting. I think when I was offered history at Legon, I was very mad with everybody. But when I took history to to the PhD level, then I realized that almost everything that I was writing was a reflection of my experiences, and especially experiences from Yendi. Looking at Yendi in terms of it at a point in time being a very powerful kingdom, I mean, having a very vast territory, and also projecting back to the 1600s where the population of Yendi actually at that point in time was bigger than some of the cities in the south. And the fact that trade radiated within and outside of Yendi to different places in West Africa. So, for example, if kola-nuts were bought from Salaga, it went through Yendi, then branched off to Togo, then straight to Nigeria, northern Nigeria, for example.
Zaria and all those
Yes,
places.
so when later in life I became a historian and started digging the archives, then Yendi became alive again because I began to see the extent to which Yendi had served a very important historical purpose as far as West African and African history is concerned. If you look at the history of armament, for example, we had a lot of arms that were being produced from within Yendi and then close by Yendi itself. So this is what I can say about Yendi.
Yeah. Talking about armaments, I found out a very strange fact that the Asante army, most of the musketeers were actually Dagombas, and that is where the word Kamonga came from. And I always erroneously thought that firearms had come from the south through the Europeans who came in. But I realized that there were firearms coming from the north through the Arab traders and the people from the Middle East. Am I correct?
Yeah, you are correct. And it's quite a pity that at times we see ourselves as independent entities. Prior to European colonization, it was not out of place for a particular ethnic group to seek support or to seek alliance from another ethnic group.
Yeah.
In fact, that is why some of us feel that the processes of historical success that will have chalked at a point got truncated by colonialism. If you look at 1744, for example, there was a kind of exchange of ideas, military ideas and alliance between Dagbon and Asante.
That's right.
And this was because if you look at that time, the kind of armament that Asante had, maskers more or less, some of them became a bit dysfunctional during some of their wars or encounters, especially with Achim. So what it was decided was to bring archers from the north, and most of them were from the Dagomba area and the Konkomba area. Now, the reverse was also for the Dagbon king at that time to also more or less fall on the Asante king at that time to also supply arms and also people with some kind of know-how about arms. So you realize that within that period, they really had quite a lot of military exchanges, to the extent that if you get into Asante today, it will not be surprising for you to come across people who have their roots from Dagbon.
Yes.
At the same time, if you go into Dagbon, you have especially the Kambwansi, who also trace their roots to Asante. In fact, the Kambwansi in Dagbon actually wear kente on top of their smocks.
Yes.
And they sit on stool rather than skin.
I see.
And most of them have Akan names. So you can get Somwa, you can get Asamani, all that within. So for me, I think that if we go back in history, we'll be able to come across very fundamental things that bind us rather than divide us.
Yeah, that is very true, because what you're talking about is something that I'm a direct result of.
Okay.
Because my great-grandmother was called Napari, and she was in Manshia in 1874 when Sir Gunnar Wolseley captured Manshia and burnt it. And one of the chief scouts of the British Expeditionary Forces was Chief Kukwanda, who happens to be my direct great-grandfather.
Okay.
And he brought her down. And he didn't know that Napari was the eldest daughter of Yana Yakubu at the time.
Yes.
And so that is how I also came into being. If it had been for that meeting. But I realized that at a certain time, the Gonjas were very close to attacking Yendi. And the Yana at the time went to the Ashantini. I think it was Kukudia the first for help.
Support. Yeah.
And he sent the troops. And so there was an Ashanti embassy in Yendi, and there was a Dagbong embassy in Manshia. So what you're saying is true. But one of my problems, and we're going to go into that deep, is that the way history is taught in Ghana in the present day, it's not meant to unite. It's all about dates and about fighting and, aggression and hostility and all that. And so it fails to, underscore that we are very much linked in everything that we do. So I'm very glad that you're here, because not only will we talk about that, we'll get on to the slave trade in which you've done, and you were in the Netherlands and all that, so you'll tell us about it. The way it is, I think that it's time for another bit of music. This is I Have a Story to Tell on ZFM 101.9. My name is Fritz Baffour, and the program on air is I Have a Story to Tell. And I have the very interesting, very dynamic, very astute professor, Samuel Ntewusu, who is the director of the School of African Studies at the University of Ghana. He's a historian, and he's taking us into the real story of Ghanaian history. Song?
Z 101.9 FM.
Heard was from Bob Marley, and it seems as if my guest Professor Ntewusu is a big Bob Marley fan.
Yeah,
I think you must have gotten that from Legon, because most of my friends whom I've interviewed from Legon, when I ask them for selections, it's usually Bob Marley. So can you tell us about your years as an undergraduate in Legon?
Yes, so I will come to that, but I actually picked this bag, as I will say, from secondary school.
Oh, I see, okay.
I had a business management teacher called Mr. Paul Kunde.
Yes.
And he loved reggae. He saw me to be quite serious with my studies and felt he needed to guide me as well. So he would always invite me to his bungalow, to top up. You know what we usually get in school. We need some top up at a point. So
Right.
go and get some protein in the body. Then he start playing reggae. And he would take his time to explain every song to me. So at a point in time, I saw reggae not as something just for the ear, but it was also good for the mind and the soul. So days in Legon were quite interesting. Actually, I think what I'm going to tell you might be a bit disappointing, but I always like to share the story. As I indicated earlier, I was actually training to be either an economist or to do business administration. And I was offered history, classics, and philosophy. So first, second years in school, I wasn't serious. I really just wasn't interested in studies. So wake up, some of the lectures I will attend, others I'll just go to bush canteen, go get something to eat and come and sleep. It was just to pass through the first year and then to reapply to UCC to read BCom or to take to do planning. So first year was actually a bit wasted. Now I applied to UCC and then to tech as well, and didn't get admission second year. So it meant I was moving to the third year. So it was in the third year that I realized that I needed to be serious. So history or no history, you must just be serious.
Right.
So if I bring my transcript to you, it's interesting that it's rather in my final year that I started doing well. But I need always to tell this story to let us understand that sometimes if students don't get the course they want to read in the university, it may end up affecting their performance. And it did affect me anyway. But I quickly bounced back in my final year. And it was actually there that Professor Akosia Pebi discovered, because those who actually were making the A, she got to know that another person is making an A who used not to be part of the hardcore. So she invited me and more or less started interacting with me and got to know the kind of pain I had as a result of being offered history, and succeeded in molding me, picked me up, made sure I became her teaching assistant and graduate assistant. So these are the days in Legon. But there's an interesting story. Two interesting stories at Legon.
Go ahead.
We were supposed to have graduated in 97,
Yeah.
but the university was closed down for an entire year by UTAC then, under the presidency of, I think, Mr. Shadow of Classics. So we couldn't graduate in 97. We ended up graduating in 98. But when the school was closed down, for me, it was also it was good for me because I did two things. I started following a vehicle as a driver's mate.
Really?
Yeah, to bring yams to Accra to sell. And we got involved in an accident. I had a cut, but that's another story. The second thing is I went into schools to teach as well. So junior high school, senior high school. So even though we missed out a year, I also learned a lot and was also able to impact. The second thing was the fight that Commonwealth Hall had with Sabah Hall at that time with Okponglo. We had one of our...
Tell us about the fight. I don't know about any fight.
Yeah. So, Commonwealth Hall always will say that almost every hall is their colony.
Yeah, right.
So they could go in at any point in time during procession. And when it is your turn to go to their territory, they usually will not allow you to do that. I think Okonglo at that time decided that they were going to go there, and they had some fracas, and it lasted for 3 days. Apparently, some had to learn some military tactics in order to defend themselves. But for me, the fascinating thing was the capture of somebody from Commonwealth Hall as a prisoner of war.
My God.
And was being kept in captivity in Okonglo. And that actually triggered the need for people in Commonwealth to go and fight and release the prisoners.
So what hall were you in?
Well, I was in Akwafu Hall.
Oh, I see.
But
Okay.
I was always at Commonwealth Hall.
Okay.
I like that level of action that was always been there. So, but I think at the end of it all, I don't know who won, but it didn't end well. People got injured, and I think that was what allowed the university to review the security architecture and to ensure that we have today a permanent fire station at the universities. These are two things that I think I will never forget in my life as far as being in Legon is concerned.
Right. Thank you very much for telling us about that aspect of Legon.
Yeah.
You know, I have friends in Legon, so I usually on Wednesdays sit in the Legon, hall in the garden there with my friends. And one day I was just sitting there, and I heard a noise, big noise, and it was a crowd coming, or a mob coming from Commonwealth Hall, from the hill, and they were pushing someone who was standing on a trolley and singing songs, and they were waving branches and everything. And I, as somebody who thought the university is supposed to be a very civilized community, I didn't understand what's going on. They said, oh, the guy must have stolen something, and so I said, why are they taking him? They said, oh, they're taking him to pond him at the entrance of Legon. I said, but this is crazy. This is barbaric. And then one of the professors, who I respect a lot, turned around to me and said, isn't it better that they pond him than they sack him?
Yeah.
And that made a point to me. So Legon has its own rules, and there's some logic behind it.
Yeah, so it's a pity that we don't have it now. For me, I felt it was quite interesting. It wasn't that serious after ponding.
Yeah.
I mean, that is it. You could still integrate. And they had different ways of ponding. They will ask you. Actually, when you are sent to the pond at the entrance, they don't go direct. They will invite law students. Some will defend you, and others will not. So they will read your crime, and then so it was also a place for law students to practice what they had learned in class. Yes. So they will offer to defend why you decided to steal, for example. But we know at the end of it, you'll be guilty. And so, but for me, it gave the law students an opportunity for them to be able to express themselves. I think we had different ways of ponding. They had face up, face down, and they also had submarine. Now, face down will mean that, well, they hold you with your face down, and then they hit you underwater and then push you in. Then if you want face up, they will rather make sure that your back goes into the water. Right. And if you wanted the submarine, they will just make you be in the water, and then they will more or less swing you and then count some few times, and that is it. But it is interesting for somebody who has committed a crime to decide to vary whether they would like to be ponded through submarine, face up or face down. I found out from one of them, which was that when they are doing the ponding, there are a lot of people around. Yeah. So some will prefer face down because it usually will at least also hide their identity, and for other health reasons, some might prefer face up, face down. But that trolley, when they are marching back, they will move
you have
to one side.
You have to push it.
And then you push it. But when they are bringing you, they actually push you. So I see it more not of punishment, but a way of ensuring that in every society, there's a way in which we should look at crime. That in the process of trying to punish people for committing crime, we should also attach a human element to it. That was what I found out or learned from that kind of action.
This is very interesting. You're giving us an insight into Legon that many people out there do not know about.
Yeah.
Well, this is ZFM 101.9, and the program is I Have a Story to Tell. And I've got Professor Aniegye Ntewusu, who is the director of the School of African Studies. He grew up in the Panda area in the northern region of Ghana. He spent some time at Salaka Secondary School, then went to Yendi Secondary School and sixth form at the Great Damasco. And then he went into Legon, where he wanted to do business studies or business administration, but ended up in history. He said he didn't like it too much, but somewhere along the line, the bug hit him. And he's now a historian of note who's traveled all over the world lecturing and giving talks on the history of Africa. Prof, so when you finished, you were teaching assistant, a graduate assistant and everything, and then you did your master's in Legon. And then from there you went to the University of Leiden in the Netherlands. Yeah. School of African Studies, how crucial is it to the intellectual world in Ghana? Because, you know, I'm a little disappointed in what we're doing in terms of our history. I realize that, and I said it before, we are not teaching our history in a way that people will absorb it and make it part of their lives. I mean, if you go to the States, for instance, they talk about the Boston Tea Party, they talk about the Civil War, you know. There was a very popular opera, Hamilton, which is about Hamilton, who was a British spy or something during the Civil War in the early days of the American War of Independence. If you go to Britain, you talk about Harold and William the Conqueror. And every Britain has a story to tell about their history, which is not about dates. You know, but with us, it's, the Ashantis fought the Gans and the Northern and all that. And it doesn't help in the unity thing, because I know that the true history of Ghana is far, far bigger than that. So, you know, what role do you think that the School of African Studies has played or is playing now in terms of academia and other things in Ghana?
Yes, so I'll come to the history. But first and foremost, if we look at the Institute of African Studies, established in the early 60s, and I wouldn't use this anymore apart from this.
Yeah.
So the intention is for us to engage in research, use more or less our research findings to teach, and also to embark on advocacy. And so essentially we have been doing that through different units or different departments. So if you come to the Institute of African Studies, we are well structured: societies and cultures, history and politics, language, literature and drama, religions and philosophy. So even though you see it as a single unit, we approach Africa in a multidisciplinary way by using these sections or units that I have just mentioned. Now, in terms of relevance, I think that there are several subjects that we handle at the Institute of African Studies, and each is able to impact students in very different ways. It is sad that many people at this point in time would like to think that, how important is African studies? Why do we have to do maybe or study Ghanaian languages? Go and study science. Go and do computer science or information studies. When we say that, we forget that even within African studies, within our own indigenous knowledge systems, we have information studies, we have science. And actually, science that is long-lasting is a kind of science that is brought from within and integrated into the cultural experience of a people. So that is exactly what we do as far as African studies is concerned. I have come across people in different work settings that actually do tell me that courses that they took in African studies seem to have helped them a lot in their everyday practice. Now, coming back to your major concern about the way specifically history is being taught, I quite agree with you, and that was one of the reasons why I think at a point in time when I got admitted to read history, I was not too serious because of the dates. But I want to say that the face of history has changed, and the way in which we teach history has changed. So if you happen to be in my class, for example, yes, we may throw in one or two dates.
Yes, they're important.
Yeah,
yes.
they are important, but we don't focus on that. We look at processes, and we try to explain processes rather than just highlight the dates. So we have made the teaching and learning of history very interesting. Now, in our class, the class that I teach, I co-teach with my colleagues, Professor Edem Adote and Dr. Fifi Ankra. If you come to our class, you will realize that those who end up getting A in history are those who haven't done history in their life before. It shows the extent to which we have taken the mystery of history for people to be interested in it. We do more of the social and the cultural so that people are able to relate very well to whatever we do. So, for example, one of the very interesting papers that people seem to read, and they have reviewed this paper all over. There was a day that I got a call from about 2 or 3 universities in the US talking about that paper. It's called the Banana and Peanut Archive of Ghana. Now, so if you go on the street to buy food, say roasted plantain and then roasted granules, for me there's history in there. So that is a kind of history.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
So if you happen to buy roasted plantain or yam or granules, don't just throw the piece of paper in which it is wrapped away. Just try and keep about 10 and you try to read. Buy from one person and you realize that the person will have been selling to you information about either an individual or an organization. So that is history, you know, very fascinating. You are able to learn society just by looking at food vendors. That is what we do. My colleague, Professor Edem Adote, has been picking funeral brochures and is able to link families and relations just by looking at the funeral brochures. So you see that with these 2 examples, the history that we do seems to be a history that is more relevant. It's not traumatizing. It's not talking about one ethnic group or conquering another ethnic group, of one being superior and another being inferior. No, that is not the kind of history that we do. In fact, when we are even teaching the history of slavery and the slave trade, we look at the facts, but we also look at the extent to which that plays out today and see how we are able to decode the way modern things happen in the present by using this kind of historical moment that otherwise we would have considered as past. So for us, the days are important, but we don't do so much of it, or we don't dwell so much on that. We try to teach the students to decode processes rather than just keep dates in their head that do not have meaning.
Yeah. Because I believe that processes are what history is all about.
Yes.
even if there's a war,
Yeah.
what caused the war?
Exactly.
All right, and how did they proceed?
Mm-hmm.
For example, you're coming to fight in Accra. What is the pathway you used? Which route did you take to come to Accra? How did it impact on all the people you passed by and everything? All right, people talk about Dodua Forest and all that, but nobody, fine, they've just become slogans.
Yeah.
And I believe that there are historical processes that have got to be taught to our people. And so, I'm putting you in a place that, look, you've got to do something about the way we teach history from the basic level.
Yes.
I grew up fine. We knew about Dago de Zambuja,
Yes.
and we knew about that. And then so everybody thought Dago de Zambuja was the guy who arrived first.
Yeah.
But it was Santarem and somebody else.
Yeah.
You understand? Zambuja came to build the castle.
Yeah.
Why did they build the castle? Nobody's told anybody. It was because it was a promontory. It was a rocky outcrop where you could put your all these things are important to our people.
Yes.
All right. And in my travels, when I was doing Sincerely Yours, I started looking at the architecture, especially in the north, and found out that the architecture depended on how to protect themselves against slave raiders and also protect their cattle and things like that. And I believe that that is what should be the narrative.
Yes.
But it's your story, and you put it very, very well for us. After your next music interlude, I'd like you to talk to us a little bit about the work you did in Leiden and then your international work.
Okay.
And then we'll come to something that you did about the Gonjas and the history of the North. All right. So what's the next song? program on the air is I Have a Story to Tell. My name is Fritz Baffour, and my guest is Professor Aniegye Ntewusu, who is the director of the Institute of African Studies at the University of Ghana, Legon, and he's a historian, and he's been telling us a wonderful story of his journey from childhood to where he is now. As I said, he grew up in Pandai, went to Salaga Secondary School, Yendi Secondary School, Tamasco, and then went to the University of Ghana, Legon. And then he did his master's at Legon, and then he went to the University of Leiden where he did his PhD. It's very interesting that you went and did your PhD in Leiden, which is in the Netherlands. And they've been in the news because when the resolution was passed, they were one of the 3 countries that voted against. That is the United States, Israel, and the Netherlands. And I must say that at a certain time in my life, I went to the Netherlands to film the relationship between the Netherlands, Ghana, or the Gold Coast, and Suriname. So I went to the 3 countries. Now, you were in Leiden. How did it impact on you? Because this was one of the biggest slave trading nations. They participated very, very fully in the transatlantic slave trade. And so what was it like going to Leiden and studying and writing your thesis and other things?
So thank you very much. At the time I went to Leiden University, the scholarship was tied to issues of mobility and technology. That was a kind of scholarship. And so I was supposed to more or less carve out a thesis that touched on anything mobile. Okay, I will now come with the word. It was called ICE, the internal combustion engine.
Okay.
So anything that had to do with the internal combustion engine.
That's trains and...
Yes. In as far as my thesis, can you imagine that a historian had to look for a topic that should be related to the internal combustion engine, not an engineer.
Right.
So it shows the extent to which the face, as I've indicated already, the face of history seemed to have changed. I was not going to learn about the slave trade or the history of colonialism or about great people, but about the internal combustion engine. So I was given the opportunity to decide what I wanted to do. So, and earlier I had done my master's thesis on Medina Zongo.
Oh.
So the issue of space and how people make use of space immediately came to mind. And I felt that lorry parks are critical spaces, and I could transfer the importance or otherwise of the internal combustion engine to the lorry park, because vehicles also use the internal combustion engine. It was interesting. The first 2 people I came to interview actually started laughing at me because they didn't see why a historian was talking about engines instead of an engineer. So that was the first impact. It made me to begin thinking of things in a very broad way. But the second impact has to do with the extent to which I was allowed to explore things on my own. The topic was not imposed on me. A theme was imposed on me, and I had to look for a topic within the theme. So it, at that material moment, also gave me the chance to be able to think more critically. And I, from time to time, actually apply it to my students. I always would like them to be very independent-minded. They can choose any topic they want, and then they write about it. So academically, that was the impact. But there was also a social angle to my experience in the Netherlands. And for me, the social angle has to do with the extent to which they value their culture and they value their history and integrate their social experiences within that. So, for example, you go by a building and you see a date, more or less 1600 something, 1700 something, and this building is kept. And through the building, you are able to trace the history of families and then the history of society. We have very few of such buildings that we give or attach respectability to when it comes to Ghana, for example. At a point in time, perhaps even family members will tell you that, look, why don't we break this house down and put up the so-called modern house? You know, but in doing that, you are also destroying a particular identity within a particular society. So for me, that was something that really shaped my mind and seemed to have made me to be very mindful about space and the extent to which we use space, especially buildings, monuments, and all that, that we need to preserve them because they speak not only about an individual, but about several people. And I also like the way in which we have an Africa Day and a Ghana Day. Interestingly enough, I think this is one that is being supported by the Dutch community for us to have an African Day and a Ghana Day. To the extent that I don't want to go into it because I'm not so much of an expert in that. Is my colleague Adam Adute who is more interested in issues about founders and founder, you know.
Yeah, right.
But I want to say that if you find yourself in another country and they think that you should celebrate your history, you should celebrate your country, then what are we doing to ourselves in trying to deny particular individuals or particular people the opportunity to be able to celebrate what others have done? So for me, such a space that was given to us, I begin to think about it in Ghanaian terms, that we should try as much as possible to set aside particular days to respect and to honor people. I'm not talking about holidays, but there should just be days that we should recognize particular people, particular achievements, particular events. Sad to say that schooling there also had its own challenges. So the issue of at times feeling a bit lonely, you know, were just very few coming from different parts of Africa. So that from time to time will make you feel a little bit sad, you know. But all in all, I think this was my experience. But there's one thing that I also want to mention about my experience in the Netherlands. I stayed along a street that was called the Breestraat, and so had the opportunity of seeing quite a lot of activities on that street. You can compare it to Oxford Street today. But it's also a street that I also nearly died because I was attacked by somebody from Burundi and quickly had to rush into my room and to call the police. So in as far as
What did you do to the man from Burundi? Did you chase his girlfriend or something?
So this is what happens.
Yeah.
Well, I must just say what happened.
Yes, might as well.
So when we went to the Netherlands, we were asked to come with a fixed residential address. And we were staying in this gentleman's house. So we asked for his residential address so that we could give to the municipality. They will give us our stay. It was me, a colleague from Cameroon, another from Nigeria. Apparently, the municipality gave him the house for his family.
Right.
But because he wanted to make money, he moved the family, wife and children, to another place so he could rent here. So he couldn't give us the documents.
All right.
And said we should give him 200 euros more, each of us, for him to go to a friend and get the permits from the friend so that we can take it to the municipality. But I told him, look, we are here on Dutch scholarship. And in case we run into police and they ask us where we stay and we bring them to this house, you have the right to say we don't, or you don't know us because we are not using the address. If we go to your friend's place, your friend will simply just say, if you are staying with me, just show me the room in which you occupy. So then we become criminals. So I think it's a bit unfair, and we'll have to look for alternative accommodation. So he said we should go. And we saw one nice lady, Amina, from Somalia, and then she gave us a place. Actually, I was the first person to secure accommodation there. It took 2 days for her to facilitate everything for me to get my stay. So it motivated my other colleagues to leave. And so he felt perhaps I had triggered. And so he attacked me at the tail end of my PhD thesis. I quite remember the day. It was
when he attacked you with the weapon?
Actually, I don't know what he concealed, but let me tell you the scenario. So on the 7th of June, 2010, my supervisor had invited me to his house. And the reason for inviting me was that he said, look, Sam, you've done so well. So far with your chapters, your thesis can go through. So please, don't stress yourself. I've just invited you for us to share drinks, for us to celebrate. So we had this very good fun, but he was waiting for me at the bus stop. So when I got down, it was summer, so it will usually take time for it to get dark. It was around 9.
Yes.
So when I dropped off from the bus, he saw me and he shouted, Sam, today I'm going to kill you. And if somebody should tell you that they are killing you abroad, I mean, it's not for fun, they will do it. So I felt I could actually fight him. But in my mind, I also didn't know what he was holding. So I quickly rushed into my room, locked, and then I called the police. By the time they came, he had left. But to show that he actually meant what he was about to do, the next day, early in the morning, he had gone to the office, my office, and was waiting for me.
My God.
Yes, so I was so lucky that my supervisor got to work early and saw him. But by that time, he had already been informed. So he confronted him. He said, well, this is a public space. I said, look, you are looking for Sam, but I want to tell you, if you kill Sam, I'll kill you here. So just get out. So the police came, they interviewed me, and actually I had to leave by 10th back to Ghana. Of course, already the work was done. But by 10th, I had to return to Ghana. That was a sad experience. When I went back for my defense, you will not believe that he still came around.
What?
Yes. And that was where we felt that we needed to upscale the threat level. And now he's not in the Netherlands anymore. He's left for Sweden because the police were really after him.
Wow, some people are very difficult.
Yeah. So that's my experience in the Netherlands. Yeah.
So, Leighton, you did your work on the internal combustion engine.
Yes.
As an aside, I've got to say, but let me say, we're on ZFM 101.9, and the program is I Have a Story to Tell. My name is Fritz Baffour. My guest is Professor Aniegye Ntewusu, who's just been telling us about a horrific incident in the Netherlands. And he said he wrote his thesis on the internal combustion engine. Trains were very important in Ghana for a very long time, and they actually helped in the development of Ghana. Steamships also relied on the internal combustion engine, and even at this moment, that's what we use in all our cars, and it's not going to be phased out for electric cars and things like that. So you went to Leiden, you did all that work and everything, and then you came back to Ghana. When you came back to Ghana, you met a very wonderful Dutch gentleman, Henry Winges, who was the managing director of Wenco. I must admit that I owe him a great deal. The late Henry Winges was the one who sponsored Sincerely Yours for about 6-7 years, and he did it with, I mean, he didn't want anything. He just wanted us to do the history, and it was through him I even met you.
Yes.
So, you know, you met Winges, and what did he ask you to do? Because I want you to tell that story about the work that you did.
Yeah, so when I became faculty at the university, I had gone on a visiting fellowship back to the Netherlands. And Henry Winches had put aside some money. He wasn't just a businessman, he was also interested in the development of Ghana as a whole.
Right.
So he had put aside some money for PhD students to be trained. I think at that time it was Professor Akwesi Adomako Ampofo, who was the director of the Institute of African Studies.
Right.
And Henry Winches wanted a kind of puzzle to be resolved for him, which is that he came, I think, more or less on volunteer or something, and quickly discovered some business opportunity in the country. Went to the northern part of the country, saw that they were very deep in the production of cereals, especially rice, maize, and other things. So he went into the supply of fertilizer. I think at a point in time he had his own factory. I don't know where it was located, producing fertilizer. So looking at the kind of success that he had chalked as a result of doing business in the northern part of the country, he wanted to understand why the north was poor in relation to the south. So he put aside money for research to be done. There were two components: money for research coordinators, that is the senior researchers, as well as PhD students that were considered junior researchers, and were to explain why this kind of disparity in terms of development. I think initially he wasn't getting the response until I think I was invited to speak to this topic. And I said, historically, the North wasn't or has not been poor. If we look at the great trans-Saharan trade, it radiated from North Africa as far as to the Mediterranean and then to Europe, and then it terminated at Salaga. So what it meant was that places like Wa, Yendi, Gambaga, Gushegu, not Tamale then, because Tamale is quite recent.
It's a recent market.
Yes, it's a recent market. Yendi. These were critical areas. Buipe. Yes. These were critical areas of wealth and wealth generation. Spaces that connected not only people, but also resources. And so for us to be able to understand the extent to which the North is now regarded as a poor entity, we need to take one community and study it. If we are able to successfully study that community, then whatever ideas, whatever theories that we are going to generate from that community, we can pan it out to the larger northern Ghana and also even to Ghana. So I selected Salaga. So when I developed the paper, I think it was just 2 pages. He seemed to have liked that idea. And that was where at least the disappointed economics in me came out. You know, I said I wanted to read economics at the university.
That's right.
So I felt I could come back and try to be an economist at that time. So I wanted us to look at the northern part of the country and its current situation from the issue or theory of substitution. Now you will ask why substitutes. The first substitute has to do with the reorientation of trade flows, of mobility of goods. So it used to be Salaga straight up to North Africa, then to the Mediterranean. Then we had forts and castles that sprang up on the coast. So that was an important substitute, trade and transport substitute. It was able to divert trade that flowed from Europe through the Mediterranean, through North Africa, to the northern part of the country. Now, straight through the coast to Cape Coast, to Accra, to Elmina, and those places. So that was the first reason for which the North started falling. The second has to do with other substitutes for stimulants. Now, as a result of the jihads, you know that alcohol was banned in most of the states in Nigeria, the Sahelian states. So the substitute for alcohol was kola nuts. And this was being produced at that time in the Middle Belt, mostly in the forested areas. Achim area, Kumasi, Bono, and the rest. So Salaga also became very critical in as far as the supply or distribution of this product is concerned. Look at the vast Sahelian countries. All of them trooping down to Salaga to acquire this. It actually brought in a lot of wealth. Incidentally, coffee came in as a substitute. You know, so he kind of liked the way I played with the whole issue of substitution. Now, if we even look at even cereals, we started having the importation of cereals from different parts of the world here rather than having so much of it coming from the North. I'm not saying that the North was the only place that we're producing cereals, especially rice. We have rice being produced in the Western region and other places, Volta region and the rest. But at least the commercial levels at which rice and maize was being produced in the northern part of the country also got substituted. So these were what connected me with Henry Winches. And every now and then, he would like me to always talk about this kind of substitution and how the project was handling it. But the unfortunate thing is, our students didn't work on that substitution. They chose to do something else. But you know, as I've indicated before, I always will allow my students to explore and to do what they wanted. So in the end, I think one wrote on armament among the Anofo. The other one wrote on the issue of reproductive health among the Gonja. The third worked on the Ewuriche or female rulers among the Gonja. And the fourth actually looked at the whole Gonja expansion within the Western Gonja area. So that was how we missed the opportunity to have been able to address a very critical issue that would have been of interest to the nation.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
This is ZFM 101.9. The program is I Have a Story to Tell and my guest is Professor Samuel Ntewusu, who is the director of the Institute of African Studies in Legon. The question I'm going to ask, and a lot of people don't understand it, but I want you to verify that as part of the policy of Frederick Gordon Gettysburg, he had a policy that deliberately did not allow infrastructural development in the North so that they could use the North as lever for the South. We're talking about the mines, and we're talking about the cocoa farms and things like that. Is that a truth?
Yeah, it is. And you know, as a historian, when you go to the archive, there are moments that you feel very sad. Sometimes you feel even a bit traumatized. There are also moments that you get completely excited. And so, if you dig the archives and look at the history of mining or the history of agriculture, yes, you come across that. Even before Gettysburg, under what was called the master-servant law, chiefs were supposed to provide mandatory labor. And this mandatory labor, the provisional commissioner or the district commissioner could order any number of people to come and work in the mines or in the
Farms.
cocoa farms. Gettysburg actually amplified it. And there were missions that were sent to go into different parts of the northern part of the country to recruit labor. And the sad aspect is that they have to match them from the north to the south. And some died on the way.
Right.
You come across files dealing with that. And if you look at the treatment that was given them in the mines, it's quite traumatizing. I've written a paper called Colonialism, Neocolonialism, and Social Justice in Mining. If you look at the way in which they were treated, the horror stories that they narrated to the police when they came. So I will say that in part, if we were to investigate that whole story of the underdevelopment of the North, this could have been a piece within it. The movement of energetic young men to come and work in cocoa farms and also to come and work in the mines. So sometimes when people see Kayaye, female porters, or see Northerners on the streets, they just assume that it's a recent phenomenon.
No.
It's just a continuation of what had been triggered at the time of the slave trade first. And then this got also amplified under colonialism. Now, under colonialism, it was actually formalized to the extent that chiefs who did not provide the number of people that were required were actually punished. So it is true that this happened in the course of our history. And when they were returning back, if they were found to have acquired some kind of disease, either in the farm or from the mines, they were, that is later when we had vehicles, they were not supposed to share vehicles with other passengers.
My God.
And you should know that the common disease at that time among them in the mines
TB.
and among them, TB,
Yes.
was TB. So they had to walk back, and many of them died on the way. They didn't reach where
So
they
there
came from.
are a lot of tragic instances,
Yes.
and that is where I'd like to talk to you about. As I said, there was a resolution passed by the UN General Assembly about
Yes.
the crimes against humanity
Yes.
The resolution was promoted by our President John Dramani Mahama,
Yes.
who happens to be a historian himself, and he's from the northern part of Ghana.
Yes.
The argument, and it upset me a great deal,
Yeah.
as somebody who loves history,
Yeah.
is that there are Ghanaians who are talking about the complicity
Yes.
of Africans in the slave trade. Now, before I ask you this question, there is no illicit trade in any area where the locals or some locals are not involved. We talk about the drug trade, even the recipients or the people who propagate the trade are people who are locals. And so that is not the point. The point is the crime.
Yeah.
And the point is chattel slavery.
Yeah.
The point is that that whole economic system was created by a need that was brought by the Europeans and all those people that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So it is disingenuous for Ghanaians who are not knowledgeable about the slave trade to make that statement. I want you to, elaborate on it.
Yes. So I think this is history, and the painful thing to say is that in talking about history, sometimes you try as much as possible to approach every issue from facts. When we talk about the slave trade, generally, there are three elements of it. We have the indigenous or the domestic, we have the trans-Saharan slave trade, and we have the transatlantic slave trade. Now, what was discussed and what was brought before the United Nations was the transatlantic slave trade. So in that case, we clearly understand the extent and the issues that we are dealing with, more or less starting from the forts and castles onto the seas and to different parts of the world, Caribbean, Europe, North America, Asia. The domestic one, I think we need to talk about it, is that which actually arose out of the need either for labor or for purposes of refilling a dying population out of disease or out of war. Now, why we need to disaggregate these different slaveries?
Before we go on,
Yeah.
I'd like us to have a musical break
Okay.
to give you enough
Okay.
energy to tell us the story.
Okay.
So what's the next one? UB40.
Yeah.
Very good.
Z 101.9 FM.
Daddy, don't go out tonight. Just stay up till morning light. Me, ma, don't feel right.
guest is Professor Aniegye Ntewusu, who is the director of the Institute of African Studies at the University of Ghana, Legon. He's a historian. He's done a lot, and he comes out of Pandai in the northern region of Ghana. He's been to Salaga Secondary School, Yendi Secondary School, Tamasco in Tamale, went to the University of Legon, did his master's there too, and then went to Leiden in the Netherlands. He did a degree on internal combustion engines, the historical aspect of it. And now he's telling us about slavery. He's telling us about the different kinds of slavery that occurred. So please continue, Prof.
Okay, so I think I was on the issue of the indigenous or the domestic. Yes,
slavery,
yes, yes. Yeah, so that one usually is as a result of the need to fill out perhaps a dying population within the family or maybe out of war. And we should know that in those days, your respectability was not only dependent on maybe monetary wealth. Your respectability as a family was also dependent on the number of people that you had. So if you had a large following, definitely you were also respected. And so that was a driving force for people to go in for other people from other communities. So at that material moment, we can see the domestic form of slavery as a way of responding to an immediate need. Now, domestic slavery also was very much encouraged because of the possibility of people getting completely integrated within the shortest possible time. So if you look at the extent to which we inherit property and identity, in Ghana, for example, maybe with the exception of the Mo that find themselves in the middle belt, where they have a kind of dual inheritance, either from their father's side or from their mother's side. Largely, we either inherit property and identity through the father line or through the mother line, matrilineal or patrilineal. So if somebody comes from a matrilineal society and you go in for a male slave, you bring in a male slave married to a freeborn female in a matrilineal system, you give birth to children that are not slave. They are freeborn. So just immediately you see yourself building a family that is not a slave family but a freeborn family. Now, if you had a female slave getting married into a patrilineal system to more or less a freeborn male in the patrilineal system, and you have a child or you have children, such children are not slaves. They are freeborn by virtue of the fact that both inheritance of family identity is passed through the father line. So essentially, if we look at the indigenous form of slavery, some communities actually encourage that because it ensured the repopulation of families, the repopulation of societies, and even the integration of same into such societies. So it was not a crime. It is true that from time to time we can trace certain things within that system that are also not too good. But immediately you have people that are already identified as members of that community. When we look at the trans-Saharan slave trade, it also arose as a result of the need for movement of goods, largely along the trans-Saharan route. We are talking about a system where we didn't have vehicles, so the route actually was highly dependent on goods both from North Africa to the then Gold Coast and then up again, for which you needed people to carry. But in the end, such people also got integrated into the communities in which they were sent to the extent that if you go even to most of some of the societies in North America, in North Africa, you can trace people that are well integrated inside communities. Now we come to the issue of the trans-Saharan, the transatlantic,
trade,
which seem to be a little bit different. as we have indicated, the issue of integration till date is even a problem. The issue of the color line is a reality wherever you go. So essentially, we are looking at a situation where, unlike the domestic system, where you are regarded as part of the family, here you are regarded as property. So that is the difference that we need to be very mindful about. And also, if you look at the way in which people were handled, if someone was going to be carried across, well, some of the historical documents indicate that once they're on board, some were freed and to move about. But that is not what we see. But if we talk about the domestic system, immediately you went in for a slave. You didn't chain the person to the house. Immediately you freed the person of the shackles and carried the person already as a free mobile person to the house. These are the fundamental differences that we need to take into account. So much so that at the moment when you ask us to even quantify those that could trace their roots to the domestic or in the domestic system, it will be difficult for us to do because many have been integrated. Whilst it is very easy for us to be able to trace out of the transatlantic. So that is what we need to bear in mind. So when people are also talking about complicity, yes, it is true, but this complicity, is it entire groups that were involved? And when we talk about complicity and generalize it and say that Africans sold their own brothers and sisters, then we are doing a great disservice to majority of the people that actually brought in slaves and integrated. We are also doing a lot of disservice to those who stood against it. You know, so yeah, it is true that when we are talking about abolition of slavery, we are quoting 1807, we are quoting 1830, but we have communities that stood against slavery and enslavement. Till date, if you go to the Bulsa area,
Yes.
they have the Fiok Festival that commemorates their successful defeat of slave raiders.
Yes.
They stood against slavery right from the word go.
Samora Ture.
Samora Ture and the rest.
Yes,
You
Batu.
know, so for people to stand up and lose family members as a result of trying to resist slavery, we actually will not do history any kind of good to say that Africans themselves were also involved. So for those who churn around such stories, they need to also be abreast with some of the historical moments that I have just narrated now.
That's great because it's a topic that people are, and it's very, very sad because I'm a communicator and the media world now is about a lot of people who don't read and don't do their research. And because they've been given a voice, they just say anything that they know that it'll pass and people will then take it up and all that. But this is not about popularity.
No.
This is a crime against humanity.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
we talk about 18 million people, but in reality, it's far, far more than that.
It's
You
more.
know, and I think that people like you should be talking a little bit more
Yes.
on this issue.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
there's a problem here that I want to use your
Yeah.
platform to highlight. It's good that we are moving fast at this, but we also need to be very slow. The reason being that we haven't done a lot of research on this, and it is quite a pity. So very much of what we have been able to do prior to the resolution, we were there. My colleague, Professor Edema Dote, was the one who gave the talk at the UN.
Yes.
Just when the resolution was passed, I also participated in a webinar
Right.
that dealt with the whole subject matter. We think that if you take CARICOM engaged the
Caribbean community,
University of the West Indies, and they didn't just use a day or a week or a month, they used years to build the information base for them to be able to come up come out with what they are saying boldly, to the extent that almost all that we are doing, we are mimicking what they are doing. It is true that we all went through this experience together, but we need to have in mind that our story is also very unique. Unfortunately, we are not actually being funded to look into this matter. And if we are not able, once we've triggered this, we should know that many are going to throw facts at us. And for us to be able to counter it, we need a lot of evidence also. So I think that the work has just begun, and we need a lot of people on board. And if you look at this whole issue of slavery and the slave trade, it is not only about historians, it's about everybody. It's about lawyers, economists, linguists, anthropologists, those who are into insurance. Everybody should actually be engaged. The reason is that this was a kind of trade, it was business, and therefore it had different angles. If I bring any historical document here today, what sense I'll make of it as a historian will be entirely different from what somebody who is coming from a law background will make of. It will be different from what somebody who is from insurance will also look at. And that is what we need, to bring in the different elements to be able to make a very comprehensive case. Otherwise, we'll get to a point that will run out of steam because we don't have the facts with us.
Right, thank you very much, because it's very, very important.
Yeah.
I'm surprised at the paucity of information on the slave trade. I happen to have loads of books on it which I've read, and I've asked questions and things like that. I've been around the world asking questions of the slave trade and everything, and we have to have a real understanding of it. And I believe that we have not really done well about the impact of the slave trade on the people who were left behind.
Exactly.
That means us, the people living around the castles and the forts, the people who lived along the slave routes and all that kind of thing.
Exactly.
You know, but it's important for Ghanaians to start getting to realize the important aspect of various locations, like Saraga, which you were talking about. You know, and the work that has been done by archaeologists like Dr. Gavois and the rest.
Yes.
And the fact that we also have a story to tell about how good we were and how advanced we were until colonialism and the slave trade came in and impacted wrongly on it. So I'm really pleased that you had the opportunity to talk to us about. But let's get back to your story. You've been all over the world. You're talking about CARICOM right now, and you're on the Vorhaus University. You're a trustee, and please tell us about your work out there. That though you're very well respected and you're in situ in Ghana, you also have international obligations that you tell us about it and how it impacts on your work that you're doing.
Yeah, so in terms of international visibility, I think I'm a recipient of the equivalent of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences in the Netherlands. So the Netherlands Academy of Arts and Sciences, more or less, I became a recipient in 2016.
Congratulations.
And thank you so much. And this is awarded to people who have distinguished themselves in their career, especially in terms of research. And I think that from the time I graduated from Leiden University up to 2016, they were following my academic trajectory and came to the realization that I was actually publishing a lot, on the basis of which I was given that award of the Royal Dutch Academy. So with that one, I had to also go to the Netherlands to impact knowledge. And so I had to give a talk to the university community I had to also give advice to graduate students at the University of Leiden. So that was what I did as part of the award. I was also the recipient of the African Distinguished Speaker series at Long Beach, University of California at Long Beach,
Right.
where I was also supposed to talk about the issue of Pan-Africanism. That was in 2019. University of Texas also last year I was a recipient of the Distinguished African Speaker Award as well. So I was there also to give a talk about the archives and the extent to which we need to be able to take our archives very seriously. At Voice University, I'm a board member there, and so it simply means that the way and manner the university is being run, I am also very critical. I take decisions. And I think what I've done as a member of the board is to try as much as possible to give visibility to my country. So I've tried as much as possible to encourage the recruitment of graduate students and other graduates also from Ghana to Voorhees University in the US. I think one that I can remember of is Moses, who is currently there. I think that there have been other external engagements that are worthy of note. I work with Utrecht University.
Yes.
There's a project that looks at coexistence in Ghana. We've been looking at the extent to which Ghana is stable when it comes to issues of religious conflicts. Other countries don't have that, but we are able to coexist, even though from time to time we have some issues.
Flare-ups.
But we are able to coexist as Muslims, as Christians, and as traditional practitioners. And we feel that this is something that should be encouraged. We had a very good project, and we trained about 4 PhDs in that area. I have also been part of the LEAP project, which is the Leiden, Legon, and University of Edinburgh network, where we bring together academics of similar minds to take on board critical research topics and themes, issues of climate change, issues of green energy, issues of mining, and the rest. So I think that internationally, this is what I can remember so far.
Right.
Yes.
My problem is that all these wonderful interventions and interactions that are going on, why is it not seeping out to the general public in a way that they would understand it and it will help? Because most of the time we feel, we feel as if we're lacking something when we've got so much to be thankful for. And my question before we go to music and then I can say goodbye is that what has happened to the Historical Society of Ghana? Because, I think that they should be the ones promoting the study of history, the kind of curriculum and syllabus we have for our basic schools right up to university. What are they doing?
It's a very good question that you have asked. The Historical Society has been going through some up and downs, let me put it simply, in that regard. You see that in the 50s and 60s, the Historical Society was very vibrant because at that material moment, the Historical Society wanted to prove that we had a lot to offer the world. So the issue of political decolonization came along with academic decolonization as well, where historians such as Edubwanyi and the rest were trying to prove that we also had a history for which the world needed to know. So that was what drove, that was the energy that drove the Historical Society. I think at a point in time it died until the early 2000s when it got revived again. I remember that at that time I was a research assistant at the Institute of African Studies and was very much a part of it, being sent around to do one or two things. Then it went into comatose again, but it's interesting that you have just asked this question because last month we met and we are trying to revive it again. I think that we need to take our history very seriously.
Very, very seriously.
And the Historical Society has a very prominent role to play. Until we do that, we will always think that we don't have solutions to most of our problems. Now, I was able to put a lot of reasons for the underdevelopment of the northern part of the country from the perspective of labor, from slavery and the rest. I think that if we're doing our work well as historians, we will get to know that at present, what is threatening the development of the North is issues of conflict. And these are very historical in nature. This one we cannot blame anybody rather than to blame as Northerners, as a people that should have understood and worked along with history. That back in time prior to colonialism, actually we worked together in spite of the wars of conquest.
Yeah.
But these wars of conquest were wars of conquest and integration. You know, the word is integration, not wars of conquest and disintegration.
Yeah, let me give you an example. It's like the Dagbon aristocracy that came from Zamfara.
Yes.
And yet they lost the use of Hausa because they integrated with the people that they had conquered.
Exactly.
And they took the language of the people that they conquered.
Exactly.
I just want to cite that example. Then I also want to cite another thing. That Ghana, the wealth of our people has been because of the trans-Saharan trade and not the transatlantic trade.
No.
Because that is what revitalizes the people in the rural areas.
Yes.
Because they can deal with people and they know the situation.
Exactly.
So we should look at that.
Yes, yes. So that is what I am trying to say. But if you, I had to chip in this issue of conflict because at present that is what seems to define the North.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and once you mention the North, what comes to mind is conflicts. But we forget to interrogate the historical reasons for some of these conflicts, which boils down to the whole enterprise of indirect rule, where forcefully you integrate one ethnic group under another by compulsion. Back to Gettysburg again.
Yes.
If you look at the attempt at the revitalization of kingdoms in the northern part of the country,
the clan heads.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. He had indicated that it should be in the interest for purposes of administration for some ethnic groups to be put under others. And the next word that came was by compulsion. And the word compulsion was spelled in capital letters. Now, today, we are still operating using these very principles that were invoked at the time of colonialism. Instead of us breaking down what has been done and say, for now, these are not fit for purpose, let's throw that away and go back to the pre-colonial period where even narratives of conquest had within it issues of integration. So our history is very much important in this regard. If you go to the northern part of the country, you can trace a lot of southern groups.
Yes.
And if you come to the southern part of Ghana, you can trace a lot of northern groups. My father had the title Asafwache. He was an Asafwache.
That's a Ghana
It's a
title.
complete Ghana title. Now, if you go to most of the northern Guan communities, they have this position of the Asafwache. And interestingly enough, they wear beads.
Yes.
You know, they wear beads. So these are the kind of histories that we need to highlight. Why should a group that is located in the north have a title called Asafwaje and then wear beads? This completely links us to the Ghana, for which we are able to learn more. So I really like this kind of question, and it is up to us historians to work very hard. Fortunately, we've put together an interim committee already, and they've already started working. And I think that under their leadership, the Historical Society will be able to do well. Now, you also touch on something that is very critical, and the issue of us as academics not being known or felt. It appears rather than civil society and politicians seeing that we should work together, sometimes they don't see that we should work together. You know, very much of our research findings are on the shelves, and actually that could do us a lot of good if politicians or policymakers would try as much as possible to integrate that. In 1999 and 2000, when we had the chieftaincy project being run at the Institute of African Studies, we already picked up the danger signals in Bimbla, in Yendi, and in Boko. We knew, because from the histories that they were narrating, we knew there was going to be trouble. In fact, I can remember already Prof. Irene Odete at that time engaging a few people, but they dismissed it as something that was not necessary at that time until we had this problem. So I will only use this medium to appeal that at least policymakers and politicians should try as much as possible to get the universities on board. We've done a lot of research, but instead of us, they will prefer to go abroad and bring consultants. 4 years or 3 years ago, they brought somebody as a consultant, and the person came to my office first.
Yes.
And told me that, look, I feel sad that it is me who has been invited and not you.
Right.
Because very much of what I'm coming to say is from your research.
That's right.
And I don't see why we don't seem to respect our academics here, our researchers here, and we'll pay money to go and bring people from abroad. I'm not saying don't do that. If the expertise is from there, fine. But if we have our local expertise, we should also make use of our local expertise. At least when we went to the UN, we distinguished ourselves. We were able to articulate ourselves very well.
That's right.
So that is what should tell you that we have a lot to offer.
All right, Prof. This is the first time I have gone over the 2 hours, and I'm really enthralled. We could go on and on, but unfortunately, time has hit us. Yes. And I'm going to plead with the producer for us to play your last song. But thank you very much for being on the show. I have a story to tell on ZFM 101.9, and I'm going to call you back for a particular historical yeah, please, go ahead. You've got to acknowledge some people, and then we'll play your song. So thank you very much for your acknowledgements, and then we sign off.
Okay, thank you so much. I think I would like to acknowledge past directors and colleagues at the Institute of African Studies. They've contributed so much to my development. I want to also acknowledge my family, my wife Dinah, and my children as well. They've been very supportive. I think social cycles are very critical when it comes to this work that we do. So I sincerely want to also acknowledge Man No Sober, MNS. That is a group that I hang out with and draw a lot of inspiration from that group. And also to the University of Ghana for giving me the opportunity to work, and also for me to be able to conduct research, and also to you, and then to ZFM for giving me the platform for me to tell my story. Thank you so much.
On that note, I'm very grateful, Prof. Sam Ntewusu, who is the director of the Institute of African Studies at the University of Ghana, and we'll sign off with your song, Good night, and let's make a date, same time, same channel, next week.
You're tuned in to Z 101.9 FM. Your